I was screamed at by my manager once for not speaking up in a meeting. Stay tuned to find out why and to save yourself from the same fate. If you just joined a company or new team, I get how difficult it is speaking up in meetings when you don't feel like you know enough yet. But you don't need to be a know-it-all to contribute and make an impression. So let's talk about 10 ways to speak up in your next meeting and be seen and heard, even if the meeting is in the first hour of the first day of your new job. Hey there, if you are new to my channel, I'm Ramona Moodley, a former McKinsey team manager turned executive coach. I'm on a mission to share the tips and tricks I wish I knew sooner in my career. So if that's interesting to you, please consider subscribing. So why does contributing in meetings matter? Well, some industries like consulting mandate it. I would go so far as to say you have to earn your place in a meeting by speaking up. At McKinsey, we call it obligation to dissent, which meant we weren't asked to speak up, we were obligated to speak up. And this obligation is taken really seriously. I learned this lesson in a scary way. On my first client engagement at McKinsey, my manager and the partner were going back and forth arguing about some inputs to a model that someone else in the team was building. I had no idea what they were talking about because my part of the project had nothing to do with the model. So I became disengaged and started multitasking. Then suddenly, the partner just screamed, "The last time I checked, there were 4 people on this team. Why am I only hearing one voice weighing in on this?" And that was all I needed to get it together and make a concerted effort to start participating in every meeting. If career progression is important to you, whether in consulting or not, you need to speak up so you are seen, heard, and remembered come promotion time. Let's jump in. The first and easiest way is to take the pen. What this means is that if you are in person, you grab a board marker and take an active role in writing down what is being discussed on the board. You can keep track of the objective of the meeting, any decisions made, or any unanswered questions that need to be resolved after the meeting. Because you are taking down notes, you can follow the trains of thought more closely, and you can ask people clarifying questions if it's unclear so that you can write it down. If you're virtual, you can use a virtual whiteboard or the chat feature to publicly capture the discussion. It's helpful because it keeps you active and engaged, and it's helpful to the participants because they can follow along more easily. Ask questions. People underestimate the power of questions. People often feel like asking questions exposes us for not knowing the answer or not being smart enough. But the smartest people I know ask the best questions. There is a quote that goes, "You can tell whether a man is clever by his answers. You can tell whether a man is wise by his questions." I don't know about you, but I would rather be considered wise than clever. I have literally witnessed whole project scopes changing because one new person who joined the team had the perspective to ask something like, "If this is about profitability, why are we only looking at increasing revenue here? What about levers to reduce cost?" Here is a helpful list of questions to ask if nothing is coming to mind. These questions are from the Art of Powerful Questions. Some of my favorites are, what is our intention here? And what does good look like? Let me know some of your favorites in the comments. Read the room. I love this one as a consultant because I didn't need to know any context at all to do this. Basically, I would look around and pay attention to people's faces, expressions, and reactions to anything that they just heard. So if someone made an interesting face or looked confused, I would ask them about it. Like if someone said something and someone looked upset or confused by what was just said, I would simply call out the observation. Like, "Simon, I noticed your expression changed when Laura said that." In this situation, it would give Simon the chance to explain his point of view. Very often the person presenting or leading the meeting is caught up in getting their main messages across, so they aren't able to pay attention and gauge people's reactions or adjust their pace or pause for questions when they need to. This is where you can come in and support. You can help the person presenting or facilitating by reading the room. Facilitate or run the agenda. This requires some work ahead of time, usually because you need to ask to be the one to facilitate or lead the meeting. Basically with this one, you lead the meeting by ensuring that everyone knows the objectives of the meeting, what you are hoping to achieve by the end, and how you will use the time to reach the objectives. I have facilitated many meetings where I was in no way an expert in the room. I once facilitated a meeting with members of a team who were trying to document the process of how work gets done in their department. I was very clear on the meeting outcome. We needed a documented process that everyone agreed on by the end of the meeting. I spent about 30 minutes planning an agenda for the meeting that would get us to this outcome by the end of the 2 hours we had together. I then shared the agenda and objective at the start of the meeting and spent the rest of the time making sure people were staying on track to achieve the objective in the time we had. Being a facilitator is almost like being a project manager. In the same way that a project manager of, say, a skyscraper project doesn't need to be a builder, an architect, or an engineer to successfully manage the project, you don't need to be an expert or a manager to facilitate a meeting well. Linked to this is make sure people are staying on track. So if you aren't in a position to fully facilitate a meeting, you can support the person facilitating by making sure people are keeping to the agenda or the objectives. You can call out that you've noticed we are running 10 minutes over on this part of the meeting based on the agenda, or that we are 5 minutes from the end and we should probably think about wrapping up. You could also call out when you feel that the group is straying too far from the objective and going off on a tangent by saying something like, "These are all really great points, but should we table these for another meeting and get back on track with this meeting's objective?" If this sounds too direct, you can also just call it out as an observation, like, "I'm noticing we are straying far from the objective." People will then take this as an opportunity to either, get the meeting back on track or adjust the objectives of the meeting to account for the new direction. Summarize or synthesize what has been said so far. This is really helpful when many people are weighing in on a topic and throwing in ideas. You can be really helpful in this situation by pulling everything up a level clearly and concisely by summarizing what you heard. Synthesizing takes summary even further. You can think of synthesizing as summary plus insight. So after you share a summary of what you heard so far, you can add your own thoughts to push the thinking even more. Highlight connections, themes, or gaps between points shared. Very often people will be adding ideas and making contributions in meetings wildly, and it feels like just, throwing sticky notes on a board. If you can notice and highlight themes that are emerging or gaps in the thinking, you will push the thinking forward. An example of this would be, say you were in a meeting and the group is brainstorming ideas to increase the revenues of a movie theater. You take stock of all the ideas and realize that all the ideas so far have been about tactics to increase the number of movie tickets sold. You can call out something like, "I'm noticing we have some great ideas so far on increasing the number of tickets sold, but what about some of the ideas on increasing price of our tickets or increasing the revenues of our concession stand?" Track and share next steps. This one is so important and often forgotten. During a meeting, people will volunteer themselves to do something or to take on something after the meeting. These next steps are usually rushed over and never talked about again. A great way to end any meeting is to call out who committed to doing what by when. It makes the meeting feel like a good use of time and increases accountability and likelihood that what needs to get done will get done. Volunteer facts, ideas, and data where you can. You don't need to wait to be called on for this. If you know the data to back up someone else's point, speak up and share it voluntarily. If the discussion is about the work that you are leading, you should be taking the lead on sharing perspectives, data, and facts. Even if you only have ideas to share based on experiences in your life, not corporate experience, share them. Living life is gaining experience. Your experience doesn't have to be corporate experience to be considered relevant and helpful. So say you're in a meeting talking about the social media strategy for a new kombucha company, and it's the first day on your job there. You have experience as a kombucha drinker and experience as a social media consumer, so you can speak up from that place. Lastly, answer questions. This point is the point that relies most on prior knowledge, and I put it last just to show how many other things you can do that don't rely on deep expertise. For this one, when a question is asked and you have an idea of an answer, say it quickly. It shows confidence and conviction. If you wait too long or wait to be called on or wait for others to speak first, you lose the chance to make an impression, or you risk someone else saying what you wanted to say. And if you're anything like me, that is one of the worst feelings when you're like, man, I was just gonna say that. We covered many tactics to speaking up today, but here are my tips for making these actionable. Be sure to speak up early. Make it a goal to say something in the first 5 minutes of every meeting. The longer you wait, the harder it gets to speak. It's almost like you get forgotten and the meeting leaves without you. Don't let this happen. Jump on board in the first 5 minutes. Next, set a participation goal ahead of the meeting. Write these 10 strategies, one per sticky note. Then before any meeting, grab any 3 of them and commit to doing them during the meeting. Lastly, pay attention to everything during these meetings. Don't multitask. Listen deeply and try to follow along everything that's being said so that you are ready and able to jump in and contribute at any time. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions and which participation technique you will try in your next meeting. That's it for this video. I am looking forward to seeing you in the next one.